Welcome to The Advocate. I'm Aaron Dean. At least 20 people are running for California's 30th congressional district, according to Ballotpedia. It's a seat being vacated by Democrat Adam Schiff, who's running for Senate after more than 2 decades in the House. Dr. Jirair Ratevosian is one of those congressional candidates. He's an out Armenian-American. He's the son of immigrants and grew up in Los Angeles and served under President Biden as a senior health advisor, and is running on the strength of his federal and foreign policy experience. The 30th district has the largest population of voting age Americans in the country, and if he wins, he will be the first Armenian American in Congress. The Advocate Channel's Stephen Walker tells us more.
I wanted to start off by saying, what was the motivation for you to, run for Congress, and the significance of being the first gay Armenian to do so?
Yeah, this is a question I get a lot. And unfortunately, the reaction is not really positive when I tell people. And that's because people are so sick and tired of Congress's dysfunction. When I tell people because I've been knocking on doors, and when I tell people that I'm running for Congress, their immediate reaction is, "Are you crazy? Why would you quit your job to go run for Congress?" And that's really concerning, Stephen. We need Congress to work. We need Congress to be more representative. Congress controls so much of our daily lives, whether it's access to roads, education, support for small businesses, schools, railroads. A lot of it is under congressional control. Healthcare, and right now, congressional politics is at its lowest point it's ever been. Unfortunately, we say that every year, but it's true. And we need fresh, young, generational change in Congress, and we need people to go there and problem solve. And that important representation is what I want to bring, and I want to go and solve problems for people of Los Angeles and for our country.
And I also want to talk about education. You talked upon this as well, and access to quality education is a concern for many individuals, particularly the burden of student loan debt. What steps do you hope to take to make higher education more affordable and reduce the burden of student loan debt?
This is a big issue now that has a lot of young borrowers activated, especially politically activated. And I think it's really important that they continue to stay on top of it. In the United States, the student loan repayment program is basically a for-profit junket, and that needs to stop. These companies are making money off of the backs of poor and low-income students and families who are struggling with a couple jobs to make ends meet. And even though students have been making small payments month to month, they don't see a dent being made in their total amount that's owed. And I'm one of those students myself. I'm pretty lucky. I've had great jobs in the last, since I was in grad school 15 years ago, but I'm still paying those loans, even though I had made massive payments month by month by month. I still owe thousands of dollars of debt. So there's something wrong and broken and with this system. And I support, as part of my American Dream Plan, a cancellation of up to a certain amount of debt, depending on the student's income and job qualifications. I believe that students should pay a small part of a debt that they have taken on to go to education. I think education should everyone should have access to education. There should be expansion of federal loans so that more people can have access to education. But we need to help students make a dent at student loans, get these off their records, and so that they can be able to have jobs, support their families, follow through with their dreams.
And another topic that sadly, as a journalist, I have to cover all the time is gun violence. And sadly, it's a huge issue that's being felt by all communities. What common sense measures do you propose to prevent gun violence?
Oh, Stephen, this is one of those issues that really fuels my anger and passion for the inaction that we're seeing in Congress. I was a staff member, a congressional aide, when we saw that horrific incident at Newtown, if you remember, in New England, and we lost kindergartners to gun violence, and that was not even enough to move the needle in Congress on this issue, and that's something I'll never forget, because we met with survivors of that incident, family members who lost young first graders and second graders. But unfortunately, that is just one of thousands of stories. This year, we've already passed the record in the number of gun violence episodes that have occurred in the United States. There are some basic things that Congress can do that a majority of the American people can support. That includes banning assault weapons. That also includes making background checks more stringent. And as a public health doctor myself, I believe that we need more research to be able to track and record the impacts of gun violence that guns have on violence in America. And we need to be supporting more NIH research and CDC research to look at the connection between guns and death. Why are Republicans afraid to do research on this? I think they know the answer. The answer is that guns kill, and that we need to take guns off the streets. That doesn't mean I don't protect the Second Amendment, but it also means there's some common sense things that a majority of Americans support, that Congress ought to be able to move to get to the finish line. Young people are getting to Congress on this issue. We're seeing millennials being elected on this issue. I'm so inspired by the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings that are campaigning across the country. I'm part of that movement, and that's the movement that's going to go to Congress and actually change the way Congress looks, and actually make some change on the kinds of issues that also include gun violence prevention.
Yes, it's definitely the next generation that's going to make the most impact. It's their lives that are at risk. And you also talk about inclusivity and equal rights are important. Definitely important. How do you plan to campaign for the rights of LGBTQ plus people and women in terms of voting rights and reproductive care?
Oh yeah, well, as an out queer public servant myself, my lived experience, and I had a difficult coming out. It took me some time. I had a long discovery of self journey, and but that my experience and the stigma, the discrimination that I felt in my own community or just in schools, that resilience is what informs the way I think about issues. The way I stand up for social justice challenges, Stephen. I mean, it's something I carry with me every single day. It's also the story of LGBTQ rights in this world. Coming out of college myself, I got very involved in the HIV movement in the United States. This was right as there was getting significant congressional resources for the Ryan White program and the global PEPFAR response. I was just graduating college, learning about HIV. I had just been to South Africa myself and seen the HIV epidemic firsthand. It was the first time for me out of the country. And one of the things I've learned as an HIV activist is that we're always fighting for not only the rights for people living with HIV to have access to medication and to have access to housing, but we're fighting for all communities that are vulnerable. We're fighting for LGBTQ people. We're fighting for women. We're fighting for persons with disabilities. That's the legacy and the community work that I've had for the last 20 years that I'll carry with me to Congress, and that will inform what I fight for over there. Congress only has 13 members of Congress that are openly LGBTQ. Now that's a record, you might say, but 13 is nowhere near the kinds of representation that we need. And with the Speaker of the House right now, Speaker Mike Johnson, being one of the most anti-queer speakers we've ever seen, we need to double that number. In Los Angeles, which is one of the most queerest districts in the country, the most diverse communities in the country, they can send an out queer representative to Congress to join that 13 and hopefully on our way to doubling it.
I wanted to ask you one thing. Before we let you go, where can folks learn more about your campaign?
So great. If folks are in California, Los Angeles, or anywhere in the States, actually, they can go to JirairForCA.com, just my first name, JIRAIR, forca.com. They can sign up on our website to get updates. They can follow me on social media, which is just Jirair4CA. We're on Insta, TikTok, all of the social media platforms. I try to be very accessible, because I want to also learn. I don't pretend that I have the answers to everything, Stephen. So I usually do listening sessions online where people tell me what's on their mind. I ask people for feedback on policy topics. I know that's not what politicians do, but that's the kind of experience that I want to take to Congress, because I want people to be part of the democratic process, and I want people to believe that Congress can work for them.